Hello there. Welcome to our channel Editorial Speech. Make sure that you hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons to the channel for editorial reading. Let's get started with today's editorials. First article. Reigning over the capital, from above. Even though it has been more than 2 months since the elections to the Delhi Municipal Corporation were held, December 4th, 2022, the city still does not have a mayor. The Aam Aadmi Party, AAP, won 134 of the 250 wards, and the Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, 104 wards. However, the election of the mayor, which is normally carried out in the first session of a new council, could not be held on 3 attempts, on January 6th and 24, and February 6, as the House was adjourned following tumultuous exchanges between councillors from the BJP and AAP. The reason was that the presiding officer had allowed nominated members to vote in the election for the mayor, deputy mayor, and standing committee of the corporation. The Lieutenant Governor, LG, of Delhi, VK Saxena, had nominated 10 members, often referred to as aldermen, to the municipal corporation just before the first session. AAP members have contested the decision to grant voting rights to these LG-nominated members and have asked for the mayoral elections to be held in a court-monitored manner. In a petition filed by AAP councillor Shelley Oberoi, a 3-judge bench of the Supreme Court headed by the Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud on Monday, orally observed that nominated members cannot go for election while scheduling the hearing of the case for Friday. The mayoral election will now be held after the top court hears the case. The brouhaha over Delhi's mayoral election reveals multiple issues. At one level, it exemplifies the increasing attempt of the union government to take control over the administration of Delhi. At another, it also raises larger questions regarding how municipal corporations are controlled by higher levels of government. The question of whether nominated members or aldermen can vote is fairly straightforward. Section 3(b)(I) of the Delhi Municipal Corporation, DMC Act, 1957, provides that 10 people who have special knowledge or experience in municipal administration are to be nominated to the corporation, but the proviso clearly states that such nominated persons shall not have the right to vote in the meetings of the corporation. Further, Article 243(r)(2)(a) of the Constitution, which was introduced by the 74th Amendment, provides that state legislation can include those with special knowledge on municipal administration to be represented in municipalities, but such persons shall not have the right to vote. Given such unambiguous constitutional and statutory provisions regarding the voting rights of nominated members, it is distressing to see the mayoral elections delayed on this ground. The real legal questions that are contentious in this context are whether the LG can nominate members independently, how persons having special knowledge in municipal administration are determined, and whether the LG's choice of members can be subject to judicial review. Instead, it is the blatant disregard of the law that the top court must now review. The larger picture. The political machinations at the municipal corporation are part of the union government's increasing attempts to gain a stranglehold over Delhi's governance. The most brazen exhibition of such power was the passing of the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi, Amendment Act, 2021. While ostensibly made to give effect to the interpretation of the 2018 judgment of the Supreme Court that had affirmed the primacy of the elected government in Delhi, the amendment in reality nullifies the judgment by clarifying that the expression government shall mean the LG. The amendment further provided that on matters specified by the LG, the Council of Ministers must obtain the permission of the LG before taking any executive decision, and also imposed restrictions on the inherent rule-making powers of the Legislative Assembly. After defanging the Legislative Assembly and the Council of Ministers of Delhi, it is now the municipal administration that the union seeks to control. In April 2022, Parliament amended the Delhi Municipal Corporation Act to merge the North, South, and East Delhi municipal corporations into a single corporation, effectively undoing the trifurcation of the municipal corporation carried out in 2011. However, While the trifurcation was effected through an amendment passed by the Delhi Legislative Assembly, the unification was initiated by the Union government and passed by Parliament, undercutting the Legislative Assembly. Though local governments are a state subject under the 7th Schedule of the Constitution, the Union government used its plenary powers under Article 239AA of the Constitution to pass this law. Now, the attempt is to control the unified municipal corporation by manufacturing a majority through nominated members. The logjam in municipal administration in Delhi also raises larger questions about who has the authority to decide how the city is governed. The issue is not merely of the union government trying to control the municipal and state governments in Delhi, but of higher levels of government exercising authority over lower levels. In fact, it is the state government that mostly has a tight rein over municipal governments across India. 30 years after the passing of the 73rd and 74th Amendments that sought to make panchayats and municipalities function as institutions of self-government, local governments tend to function as administrative vessels of the state government, and not as an independent level of government. A weakening union and state governments stifle the authority of municipal governments in multiple ways. While the 74th Amendment envisaged states to devolve a set of 18 functions to municipal governments, many of these functions continue to be exercised by state government-controlled parastatal agencies, such as development authorities. The executive powers of the municipality are often vested with the state government-appointed commissioners, rendering the mayor to a ceremonial role. Most crucially, municipalities are vested with very few revenue-generating powers, keeping them reliant on grants and loans from the state and union governments. More recently, national-level urban programs such as the Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission, JAN-URM, and the Smart Cities Mission have given the union government a larger role in driving urban development and governance. As local governments get weakened in the midst of an overall centralizing trend in Indian polity, there needs to be more conversation about what authority each level of government should exercise. While local autonomy is crucial, higher levels of government can also have a legitimate role in local issues to ensure regional coordination, reduce spatial inequality, or manage economic and environmental externalities, for example. However, the reasons why union or state governments interfere in local governance is often not because of such discernible objectives, but are driven by the desire to accumulate political and economic power or for short-term electoral advantage. While it is important to acknowledge and understand the realpolitik considerations driving the powers of the municipality, we should also not ignore the fundamental values of local democracy that underpin municipal authority. Next article. Deep-sea fish conservation must not go adrift. The Supreme Court of India has given permission to fishermen using purse-seine fishing gear to fish beyond territorial waters, 12 nautical miles, and within the Exclusive Economic Zone, EEZ, 200 nautical miles, of Tamil Nadu, but observing certain restrictions. The court's interim order of January 24, 2023, against the banning of purse-seine fishing by the Tamil Nadu government in February 2022, seems to be more concerned about regulating fishing with administrative and transparency measures than about the conservation measures and obligations which a coastal state owes in its EEZ under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. However, conservation measures, as suggested in various regional conventions, and judgments of various tribunals, embodying conservation measures based on best science or relevant scientific evidence to control overfishing and protect endangered marine living resources from extinction, should have informed the order. Purse-seiners tend to overfish, unlike traditional fishermen using traditional fish gear, thus endangering the livelihood of the traditional fisher. Conservation and conventions. The top court should seek guidance from the obligations arising from the multilateral and regional conventions, which are meant to bring in sustainable fishing practices over a certain period of time, thereby allowing a common resource, such as fish, to be naturally replenished. Under Articles 56.1a and 56.1b(3) of UNCLOS, coastal states have sovereign rights to ensure that the living and non-living resources of the EEZ are used, conserved, and managed, and not subject to overexploitation. Access to the zone by foreign fleets is also solely within the coastal state's discretion and subject to its laws and regulations. In order to prevent overexploitation, coastal states must determine the total allowable catch, TAC, in the EEZ, Articles 61, 1, and 2 of UNCLOS, in light of the best scientific evidence available. The guidance from the Convention for the Conservation of Southern Bluefin Tuna, 1993, SBT, could have also been sourced by the top court to enable recovery of depleted fishing stocks. The crux of the SBT is TAC and distribution of allocations among the parties to the SBT, which are very relevant from the angle of conservation of general fishery. TAC and the catch quotas are aimed at putting sustainable use into practice among fishermen and maintaining maximum sustainable yield, MSY. The efforts to implement TAC and catch quota might face scientific uncertainty relating to safe limits to ensure MSY. In such a situation, the established international environmental law practice is to lean on adopting a precautionary approach. Regulation of fishing methods, merely restricting the purse seiner to fish on 2 days Monday and Thursday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. in the court order, is not sufficient without regulating the fishing methods used. International legal efforts are gradually moving in the direction of abandoning the use of large-scale pelagic nets. The huge size of the purse seine nets, 2,000 meters in length and 200 m in depth, allows maximum catch for the purse seiners, in turn leaving behind insufficient catch for traditional fishermen. There are several regional organizations that either prohibit the use of large drift nets or at least call for their prohibition, such as the 1989 Tarawa Declaration of the South Pacific Forum. The 1989 Convention for the Prohibition of Fishing with Long Drift Nets in the South Pacific goes as far as to restrict port access for drift net fishing vessels. The United Nations General Assembly passed resolutions 44-225, 1989, and 46-215, 1991, supported and strengthened this development, calling for a moratoria on all large-scale pelagic drift net fishing vessels in high seas. Although the conventions and the UN General Assembly resolutions are applicable to the state parties in the high seas, these are relevant in terms of preventing overfishing in general and the conservation of fishery management in the EEZ as well. On non-selective fishing technology, the court's final judgment needs to look into non-selective fishing methods by purse seiners, resulting in the bycatch of other marine living species, which could include, many a times, endangered species, a potential ground for trade embargo. A party under Article XX-B can take measures to protect human, animal, or plant life, provided it involves conservation of exhaustible natural resources, if such measures are made effective in conjunction with restrictions on domestic production or consumption. Article XS-G. In shrimp turtle, the appellate body held that the U.S. measure, which prohibited imports of shrimp from any country that did not have a turtle excluder fishing gear comparable to that of the United States, fit the Article 9G, exception for the conservation of exhaustible natural resources. However, the appellate body also found that the U.S.'s measures had been applied in a way that violated the chapeau, by treating certain Asian countries differently than America's trading partners in the Western Hemisphere. Despite the best conservation measures and regulation of fishing methods adopted by the authorities, it will be a challenge in dealing with the limitless character of the seas, which renders a common resource, such as fish, available for exploitation by all. The theory of Garrett Hardin, The Tragedy of the Commons, which says, "Freedom in a commons brings ruin to all," should convince all fishermen, especially the purse seiners of Tamil Nadu, that they must cooperate in complying with conservation measures. Next article. Shuffling feet. Navigating foreign trade dynamics needs sharper policy responses. India's goods exports, a key driver of its growth impulses and a major job creator, got off to a disappointing start in 2023. Merchandise shipments fell 6.6% year-on-year to $32.91 billion in January. While this is the second month of contracting exports, the dip is more than double the 3% drop in December 2022 and marks a sharp 13.6% sequential decline. Along with an anticipated post-Christmas cooling off in demand, order books probably took a hit as much from actual slowing of economic activity as buyers wary assessments about consumer confidence levels, with the new year kicking off amid a pall of gloom and doom on the global economic outlook. Engineering exports fell 10%. Pharma products lost momentum, as did 14 other products out of India's top 30 export items, including jewelry and textiles. The silver lining is that imports dipped too, bringing the goods trade deficit to a 12-month low of just $17.75 billion, a far cry from the $25-odd billion averaged in each of the previous 6 months, and the record $29.23 billion gap of September 2022. If this trend holds, India's current account deficit for 2022, the 23rd of May, end up lower than the uncomfortable 3% plus levels of GDP projected by most agencies. Yet, the drop in imports during January suggests domestic demand growth is fading. While the year-on-year drop was just 3.6%, the $50.66 billion import bill for January is the smallest in 18 months and 15.8% lower than December's revised $60.2 billion figure. Only a part of this step-down can be ascribed to lower commodity prices, as non-oil, non-gold imports have fallen by a sharper 6.7% from January 2022 levels. The Commerce Ministry has argued that India's weaker trade balance this financial year has been driven by the two-way effect of a slowing world economy hurting exports and resilient domestic demand shoring up imports. That effect no longer seems to be at work. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has rightly flagged concerns about Indian exporters' prospects this year amid global slowdown fears. Her prescription that exporters keep closer tabs on developments in different markets to avoid being demotivated is also spot on. Amid the overall headwinds, trends are diverging in key markets. U.S. retail sales rebounded to grow faster than expected in January, while Japan's trade deficit hit a record. More UK-based trading businesses now expect an uptick in turnover this March, compared to those that expect a fall, as per a survey by its statistics office. Industry bodies and the government must work in tandem to tap shrinking opportunities better and help exporters move across this river of uncertainty by feeling the pebbles along the way. Next article. A time to quit Miss Sturgeon's resignation is a setback for the independence movement. When Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, announced her resignation on Wednesday, comparisons were immediately drawn between her decision and that of Jacinda Ardern, the former New Zealand Prime Minister who quit last month citing burnout. "In my head and in my heart, I know that time is now," said Scotland's first woman and longest-serving First Minister. The parallels actually run deeper. As with Miss Ardern, whose popularity was dipping in the face of policy setbacks, there were underlying reasons behind the Sturgeon exit as well. Miss Sturgeon rose to power in 2014 after Alex Salmond, the Scottish National Party's SNP former leader, quit following a defeat in a Scottish independence referendum. 55% said no. The vote was seen as a setback to the SNP's bid for independence, but Miss Sturgeon revived the campaign after Britain's European Union exit, arguing that most Scots wanted to stay in the EU. When the UK Supreme Court ruled last November that the Scottish Parliament did not have the power to call another referendum on independence without Westminster's approval, she floated a proposal to use the next UK general election, due in 2025, as a de facto referendum. A victory for pro-independence parties would be seen as a yes vote, which triggered considerable opposition even within her own party. It may not be a coincidence that her decision to quit comes before a crucial SNP conference, which is expect Ed to take a call on the proposal. Independence was not her only major challenge. Her promise to expand transgender rights hit a wall after a convicted double rapist, a trans woman, was sent to a women's prison. A bill passed by the Scottish Parliament to make it easier for trans people as young as 16 to get government recognition for their acquired gender identity was blocked by the UK government, citing safety issues for women and children. Besides, there were growing concerns about the status of the healthcare system, a nurse's strike over pay and wariness over the waiting time for accident and emergency cases, an ongoing teachers' strike, closing educational institutions, and a Paul ICE investigation into a loan her husband, Peter Murrell, gave to the SNP. All this put Ms. Sturgeon, otherwise a formidable leader, in a spot. Ever since Mr. Salmond quit in 2014, Ms. Sturgeon has been the face of the independence campaign, and her resignation is a setback for the same. Both Mr. Salmond and Ms. Sturgeon failed to break the threshold on their most important cause. Her successor will have to rebuild the movement while also addressing more pressing economic and governance issues immediately. That's it for this video. Thank you for giving your precious time to our channel. Please support our channel by subscribing to it, liking it, and sharing our videos with other students. This helps us reach more and more students.